How are you doing today? My name is Transgamer Live. Maybe you've heard of me, maybe you've not. If you haven't, go ahead and smash that like button. Go ahead and smash that follow button. And, watch my videos because I can get some information out there. Now, today's a little bit of a different thing. I came across this video. It's 11 months old. It's by Father Casey Cole, which is a friar for the French Franciscan Catholic Church. And I can't, being an ordained minister, being trans, being everything here, I I can't I can't get back behind this. I really can't. Um, as in, why why would you um why would you put this out there? The the title of the video is "This is disgusting. Christians should be outraged." It's almost a 12-minute video. Um I am going to pause it throughout the video, and we are I'm going to lead a discussion here, and I really would love for um you to put stuff in the comment section that would help this discussion out. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe my parents taught me old fashioned, you know? Um, it's talking about people in prison. And to lead into the segue, I used to be a TDCJ officer. I were I At the last part of it, I was a sergeant working on being a lieutenant. Uh, but whenever it comes to people in prison, yes, there is some people that are in prison that are on poor charges, meaning wrong place, wrong time. Basically, they was framed to be there. Okay? I can understand that. And I can understand them trying to get an appeal and trying to get out of there. But for those that did the crime, they should also be doing the time. Now in Texas, Texas is a lot different than any other state. Texas offers a lot of free stuff. You have work, but it's they don't pay you, but they offer you a lot of free things. You get free Medicare after you get, and this is, and I'm going to say it like this: you get free Medicare once you get through with prison, no matter what. Okay, and that's because you've worked. A normal everyday person, they have to pay for their insurance. They have to pay for everything. But a uh, a criminal, somebody that's been in the penitentiary, they don't have to pay for that. It's given to them. It's a right for them to have. Now, is the job super hard? Some of them are. Some of them are. I'm not going to lie to you. Are they as hard as what Father Casey has put out there? No, not even close. I mean, I can understand some states doing this. From what he's saying, that it's a mal. Well, I'll say it like this. We'll stop here, right here. We'll get into the video, and then we'll pause it uh, later on, and I'll explain it to you. Okay, here we.
Would you say that there is ever a justification for slavery? Sounds like a pretty ridiculous question, but hear me out for a second. Think about every situation you can imagine. The worst people you can think of, your worst enemy. Can you think of any situation where you would say that owning another human being is morally permissible? Where it would be okay to have complete control over where they lived and what they did? Where you could make them work as long as you wanted, doing grueling labor for little or no money?
First of all, you have. Okay, with each prison, they work as long as the guards work. So if they go into food service, they're there from 6 o'clock in the morning to 6 o'clock in the evening, whenever the guards, or whenever the people, the officers, check out.
Punishing them however and whenever you wanted. This would include the right to cut them off from their family, their friends, and all forms of leisure, subjecting them to physical or mental abuse to keep them behaved, docile, and afraid to run away. This is really, really awful stuff. But I want to make sure that everyone is clear on what slavery actually is. My hope is that your answer is no without any hesitation in your voice. What I've described is heinous and unthinkable in our world today. I know for myself, as a Christian, I've been taught to love my enemies, not hate them. I know that each and every human being is created in the image and likeness of God, and as such, is due inalienable human rights and dignities. Every life has worth, not because they've...
You're right. Every life does have worth, but the thing is that whenever they turn that worth and they cash it in, doesn't that mean whenever they go and strike a person down, being a killer, or being a rapist, or being people like that, should we look up to them? No. No. And for Father Casey to actually, um, kind of put being in prison to slavery, that's two different things. Yes, in some instances, they are the same. I agree with some instances. But with being in prison versus being in slavery, no, no. Because being in prison, yes, they should make your life super hard. Okay? But I'm fixing to make something, and probably I'm going to get persecuted too. Being in prison should be worse than slavery. Worse. Like I said, if you do the crime, you should do the time. Now, let's get back with the video.
earned it or because they're useful to society, but because God has created and loves them. So, no.
So the reason why every person or every life has worth is because God loves them. Not all people believe in God.
I can't imagine a situation where this level of dehumanization could ever be acceptable. Not for an enemy of war, not for a political adversary, not for Hitler himself. It's wrong and disgusting.
Whoa, whoa. Not even for Hitler himself. He killed he killed God's people. And you're still not wanting to you hold Hitler above God's people. That's just like you made this video. And I'm fixing to touch on something very personal here. You made this video and you think criminals should have a cakewalk, you know, just to, you know, slap on the wrist and get out of there while you demean and trash the LGBT. You Catholics, you're some funny people.
Always and everywhere. Which is why I have such a problem with the American prison system. Yeah, this is not going to be an uplifting video.
The American prison system. Let me say something on this. You go to Russia, they have it way harder. You go to China, they have it way harder. You go to Japan, they have it way harder, I believe. I've I've not been around or talked to anybody that's been around a Japanese prison. You go to South America, you have it hard. Than the United States prison system. I mean, you even go to Mexico, uh, and you have a hard time. You can get killed there literally just by, eyeing somebody. If you don't believe what I'm saying, there is a show on Netflix called World's Toughest Prisons. The guy goes and infiltrates these prisons just to go and have something to do and for people to actually see what it's like. I mean, don't take my opinion. I've watched these types of shows and I can call them out on their, bull. But these was genuinely done. They told the prison whenever this guy enters, treat him like every other prisoner. So I guess, looking at the picture, who's the dope now?
But it will be an important one. For some, if not most, the idea of equating a prison sentence with slavery seems like a stretch. Clickbaity hyperbole, controversial woke nonsense, right?
Not woke. I would definitely put this more Republican-esque because I want a lesser government. See, going to politics, the Democrats want medium government, lesser restrictions. The Republicans want smaller government, more restrictions. So I kind of get this to be more Republican and uh not woke, not woke. Well, you could I don't know on that. But yes, clickbaity way over.
Right? I get it. But if you give me just a few minutes, I think I can convince you otherwise. The topic is divisive, sure, but it's not actually controversial. The facts speak for.
Very controversial. Super controversial. So controversial, I'm asking what the was going through your mind, Father Casey, whenever you made this video.
For themselves, and they should upset us. And so we begin, quite obviously, with the fact that incarcerated people are locked in.
Okay. These right here, those two images that you just saw, that's more locked up abroad images. I think I've seen that first one. I want to say it looked like whenever they did a episode in Venezuela, and then this one right here. I mean, this could be California. This could be California. But this is no, I mean, this is no worse than what uh our military had to go through. I mean, whenever they go through basic and whenever they go through AIT back in the 90s, they had to sleep in the same type of scenario. The only thing that's different is that you don't have a drill instructor in the middle of it. But well, you know, I'm just a simpleton.
In prisons with no ability to leave, just like slaves. Now, this in its.
Okay, okay. No ability to leave. Just like slaves. Here's the thing. If they didn't do the crime, they wouldn't be there. They would be home with their family. They would be home doing what they need to do to help their families. This is not 1886. This is not the 1700s. This is 2024. And yes, although there is systemic racism still in this country, you may get jail time. I've not, well, I won't say that I haven't seen it pushed to prison sentence, but you can't compare slavery to the American prison system or to any type of prison.
Itself is not so problematic, as even the Catholic Church would contend they need to care for the common good of society. Some are a danger to others, and so they need to be separated. Except, prisons do more than just keep people safe from others. They put prisoners to work. Today, there are an estimated 800,000 prisoners that work as a part of their sentence. To put that number into perspective,
Okay. 800,000? Yes. That's not a prison. That's a jail. And jails do pay. No matter where you're at. Jails do pay their prisoners or their jailees to go out there, pick the vegetables, and do whatever. even if they're self-sustained, where they have like uh like a milking area for cattle, vegetable canning, I mean, just all of this, they pay their people, they pay the prisoners. Yes, it's not minimum wage, you're not gonna sit there, but they don't buy nothing at full wage anyway. They can buy a TV for $30, and that's even in the prison. Yeah, it's not the best of the TVs. It's not a 57 or 55-inch plasma, uh, you know, TV, or it's not a LED TV, or it's not a OLED TV. It's it's basically an old analog TV, but they buy it for $30. They can buy radio. They can buy pretty much everything, all except for a cell phone. And the thing is you wouldn't have to do it if you didn't do the crime. I mean, there's people that get smart. You get free college in these places. Why can't we get free college out here in the real world? You get you can go and let's say like this, a juvenile, uh or even the older generation, they don't have their high school diploma. They can go get their high school diploma free of charge here in the American prison, even in jail. They have an extensive law library to where they can walk out and be lawyers. Yes, my brother, I don't condone what he did, but he is a preacher too. I don't condone anybody that has relations with a non-consulting individual, child, or anything. But whenever it comes to family, you can't forget, you can't forget that, yes, they're family, even though that they did wrong. Yes, this is where God calls to forgive. But sometimes you can't forget. And see, that's, you know, basically get getting off topic. But yeah, um sheriff's department, they pay their people whatever, you know.
That's about the population of San Francisco. And these people are not freely choosing.
They don't work on the railroad no matter what. This picture's uh fake. I've never seen prisoners ever, whether they be in the jail system or whether they be uh in prison, federal prison, they don't have the right to work on the railroad. That is all done by railroad personnel.
Choosing to work, they are forced to work. Some are forced to work as a part of their sentence and are penalized with harsh punishments if they fail to comply.
Wrong.
Others work because it's the only way to survive. You see, even though someone might be in prison,
It's the only way to keep your sanity is to work.
doesn't mean that everything is provided for them. Our tax dollars only go so far. Phone calls cost money. So does toothpaste, toothbrushes, deodorant, bars of soap, feminine products.
Toothbrush, 10 cents. These are all prices that I know of whenever I was a sergeant because I wouldn't go in to Walmart. And I was a cheap person. I will tell you this. I was a cheap person. The only thing I really did, uh, the only thing that I really did put money towards was my TV. And uh, at that point in time, I had a PlayStation. Uh, but ramen noodles, it's a cent a pack. Uh, Toothbrushes was 10 cents. Uh, Bar soap was 5 cents. Uh, I mean, these prices, you go and try to get a toothbrush for 10 cents. Toothpaste was 5 cents also. You go and try to get that from the store, Walmart, HEB, wherever you are at. And watch you just yeah, you won't, you'd be laughed out of the store for sure.
And extra food. The goal of most prisons, especially those that are privatized for profit, is to provide the bare minimum.
Privatized for profit, there's not supposed to be any, but there is uh like there is extenuating circumstances for people to get them off the national grid, to put them in prisons. I wouldn't say for profit, but it's private prisons, yes.
Unfortunately, recent lawsuits have shown that even this is not met in many places. Some prisons only provide 2 meals a day, while others provide only inedible food.
Okay. Soy diet for Illinois prisoners. Ain't a bad diet unless you're, you know, allergic to soy. Soy is a bean. Okay? Doesn't mean that it's gonna be, I mean, you can actually make a pretty decent hamburger out of soy. Uh but for the state of Texas, you get 3 meals a day unless you sleep all the way through breakfast.
In Michigan, maggots were found in prisoners' food. In Illinois, rat droppings and cockroaches. It's no wonder that a study found that 94% of incarcerated people feel constantly hungry. Now, some
Did I say ramen earlier? They ain't hungry. Not whenever you can. I've seen whenever I was with state of Texas, I seen people come in with like 7 of those big, huge cases of ramen, different flavors. They still went and got it.
will say that giving prisoners incentive to provide for themselves and give back to the economy is a good thing, right? It creates new virtues, new work ethic. Sure, in theory, just not the way it's being carried out. Because prisoners are exempt from OSHA standards and the Fair Labor Standards Act.
Not here in the state of Texas, you get yeah, they get compensated in other ways. But OSHA regulations, they had to abide by, so does the state of Texas uh, officers, inmates, everybody.
Among other regulations, the incarcerated are often thrown into dangerous situations. They are sent to fight wildfires, made to use powerful industrial machinery in factories without proper training or safety.
To go do wildfires, you have to be properly trained. So you cannot state that anybody And uh, this is from what I know about California. They do have prisoners that go out there and do the wildfire fight. But they are so properly trained. And they don't run off. They love they love going out there and doing that type of stuff. It gets, I mean, yeah, it's work. It gets them to where they're sane again.
And they're forced to work in agricultural fields with no water and broken tools for hours in the heat.
They have water. I believe me, believe me. Especially whenever you have to uh drive the tractor like what they have to go get more water. Oh yeah. The state of Texas does not, you know, that's one thing that I can put on the director is that he don't want his inmates falling out. He wants them alive and healthy.
Here's just one example of what it's like to be a prison worker, as written by the ACLU. In Colorado, an incarcerated worker assigned to a sawmill was told by a supervisor to reach into a conveyor belt area to dislodge a piece of wood. A blade sliced through her helmet and straight into her skull, nearly decapitating her. Instead of being rushed to the emergency room, a shift commander ordered her back to the prison infirmary with 2 feminine hygiene pads on her wound because the sawmill had no first aid kit. She later developed an antibiotic-resistant staph infection. In the open market, dangerous and undesirable jobs like this pay additional wages to attract workers, but this is not necessary when labor is forced. And so, despite producing roughly $11 billion a year to the economy, prisoners receive, on average, 13 to 52 cents an hour for private businesses across all states, up to 30 cents to $1.30 an hour in state-owned industries. Imagine working 8 hours.
Now, on private prisons, I could, you know, private prison is way different. I mean, private prisons here in Texas, yes, they do pay. But state prisons are what, and also we have another one called state jails. They don't pay. They're all basically prisons. But uh, one is ran by the state, the other ones are run uh, by a private sector, and some of them are owned by John McCain and Dick Cheney if he's still alive.
Doing grueling work and walking away with $2.40. But that's not even the most absurd part of this. These wages, as small as they already are garnished and taxed by prisons. That's right. You're probably not even taking home all $2.40 for the day. That money is first put towards court costs, restitution, and get this, room and board. Yes.
Wrong.
Prisoners are forced to pay for room and board they're forced to be in. In total, studies estimate that between 50
It's wrong in the state of Texas. I will say it like that. They ain't gonna, if they incarcerate you, they ain't gonna make you pay room and board.
50 and 80% of prisoners' wages are withheld for various purposes. 50 to 80%. Of course, this whole situation is avoided completely in 7 states, as they don't pay wages at all. That's right, Texas, Arkansas, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, Florida, Nevada, and Maine. Prisoners are forced to work in your state, producing goods and services that the government sells for a profit and aren't compensated at all. Add this to the fact that prisoners are constantly dehumanized, stripped of their dignity and often their clothes, and given no recourse for subhuman conditions, and what you get looks a lot like slavery to me. A connection that, to many, is not just a coincidence, but by design. You see, when slavery was officially abolished with the 13th Amendment, an exception clause was added. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction, except as a punishment for crime. It's right there in the design. With this clause, slavery was never actually abolished. It was just limited to a specific situation, a situation that has been exploited ever since. Laws were written in Reconstruction South known as the Black Codes that, among other things, made it illegal to be on the street and without a job. Police could go around, round up any black person without a job, and throw them in jail for many years. Right back to forced.
In history, yes. I mean, in history, they was able to do that. I mean, they're still able to do that because of systemic racism. But the thing is like I said, and I've been away from the prison system since 06. Because that's whenever I started driving truck. Are they still able to do that? Probably so. But I can honestly say, for something like that in the state of Texas, basically around me it never did happen. Okay, around me that never did happen. I don't recall anything that was ever to that point where somebody, the police just picked them up off the streets, put them in jail. They got sentenced to TDCJ, and then they came and saw me. I've never seen it. Doesn't mean that it didn't happen. I didn't see it while I was going and working there.
Forced free labor they went. Once this didn't work, it was on to criminalizing drugs and increasing enforcement, particularly for drugs.
Tricky Dicky. Richard Nixon. Yeah. Back in, like I said, back in history, yes.
Most used by people of color. Institute 3 strike laws and mandatory minimums, and you are guaranteed to maintain a steady
3 strike law. I know of only one state that still has that, and that's California. What that is that with the 3 strike law, you get 2 chances to go to jail. And if you go to jail for that 3rd time, they keep you there for life.
Influx of new workers each year. Add this to the fact that convicted felons, even once they finish their sentences, are ineligible for government assistance or housing, or often
wrong. They cannot vote, but they can get government assistance, such as like whenever you get out, you do get Medicaid for life. Doesn't matter if you contracted a disease or you was healthy on the way out, you still get free medical care for the rest of your life in the state of Texas.
Barred from many jobs and cannot vote, and what you get is a growing population of systematically disenfranchised people that are more likely to return to prison, where they will happily be received to provide more goods and services for next to nothing. Housed in places away from society, behind walls, with limited access to visitors or media, ensuring that everything is out of sight and out of mind. And really, who would question it anyway? They're criminals. Bad people. They deserve it, right? This is not a rehabilitative system. Between 85 and 90% of inmates are not serving life sentences, meaning that they will re-enter society at some point. There is no way that you can say that they are better off because of this system. It is
No, they're not better off. And here's the one thing: there's not a rehabilitative pro. Well, they call it rehabilitative, but whenever you put, here's the thing: it's been focused on by psychiatrists and also therapists and all of this, all these other people that has degrees. If you take a person away from uh, one part of their society for 10 years and then throw them back in the same situation, yes, it's going to cause a person to be habitual, meaning that they are going to go out there, do that same crime, get locked away again. Definition of insanity: do the same thing, respecting different results. But that's the thing. If you say, okay, hey, let's train them not to go and do that, not only it would cost the American taxpayers a lot more money because be they're going to be asking or they're going to be rehabilitating these people for real. I mean, I would rather pay for somebody to get fully rehabilitated to where they don't go back to prison rather than them to be put in the same type of scenario and get locked up again. I mean, there's no there's no rehabilitative programs out there. You can see, you can try to have something like that, but there isn't.
Is far more than a means of incapacitation. There are ways that we could safely house people away from society while maintaining their dignity and providing for their needs. This ain't it. And a look to the ever-growing number of prisoners and high recidivism rates show that it is nowhere close to a deterrent. Quite the opposite, actually. Because privately run prisons have quota requirements in their agreements with the government, police forces and judges are actually encouraged to punish to the full extent of the law. Beds will be filled one way or another. No, prisons in this country are not about rehabilitation, they're not about incapacitation, and they're not.
Beds will be filled one way or the other. No, no. And that's one thing that I can say about the private prison that I know of that's here in the state of Texas is that they don't pride themselves for that. They don't even go and try to contract the um with the local police or local sheriff's office. Yes, the sheriff's office is right there just in case, but they hired their own people. Beds will be filled one way or the other. You're taking old factual information and trying to push it to be new. That is kind of sort of the rapture type programming fear that we have today. Oh, the rapture's coming. The rapture's coming. Okay, it says in the Bible that you won't know when the rapture's coming. Yes, the rapture is coming, but you won't know when. Well, there's already signs for it. Okay, and it could be 10 more thousand years before we see the rapture. Doesn't mean that it's going to happen overnight. Well, you need to get uh you need to to get your life right with God. Okay. Why? The rapture's coming. That's their whole fear. It's called fear mongering. And whenever you go and have that type of fear mongering over people, especially elderly people, that's all they care about for the rest of their life is that fear.
Not about deterrence. They are, first and foremost, and have always been, forms of retribution, of punishment, of causing pain and shame in people because they have done something wrong, so who cares about them? They deserve whatever they get, right? And so returning to the beginning.
So, say if a person goes and does a uh basically goes into and heaven forbid this, somebody does a let's say the whole Bruce Wayne thing goes, a couple and a kid comes out of a theater. A person guns down the father and mother, almost wanting to kill the child, but gets spooked by the police sirens. The kid grows up. Now, are you saying that that killer should be still out there on the streets? Oh, he killed, but God loves him anyway. You're saying that every sin should be set free? And no, no. Every sin should not be set free. I mean, what if something happened to you? What if something happened to one of your friends, Father? Every sin should not be set free. It should hold some type of consequence.
I just have to ask, does any of this sound morally acceptable to you? Even if you don't accept the widely posited conclusion that the prison system today is just modern enslavement, there is no
Today's prison is not modern enslavement. Today's prison is what it is. It's prison. Uh you can't you can't do you can't compare the two. Like I said, yes, there is some people that, yes, they got convicted for the wrong thing. But there is some people that was there because they actually did the thing.
denying that there is something absolutely unjust and inhumane about it, something fundamentally against the dignity of the human person at play. Is this something that Jesus would support? Is this how Jesus
You ask that question. Would Jesus support it? Are we trying to weaponize Jesus? Or we have already weaponized God. Are we weaponizing Jesus too? To where, oh, if Jesus doesn't support it, then we don't need it. Okay, in the Bible it says love one another. But Christians have a hate for the LGBT. Not all churches, but Christians in general. The most Christians out there has a hate for the LGBT. Would Jesus support the LGBT? Yes. I believe that he would come down here and have a piece of rainbow cake with us. All of us. I think we're the most level headed people out there. Also, I think that Catholics should not be the only one that controls the Bible. We are led to believe because there's been books and all chapters renamed and stuff like that because Catholicism has gotten rid of books. Book of Enoch being one of them. There's several other ones that, yeah, uh, they call them Apocrypha. Okay, but the actual Bible wasn't written until what, 900, maybe 1200 AD? Something to think about. Would Jesus support it? Prisons? Yeah, Paul was in prison. He didn't bust him out.
Jesus would have us treat our enemies. Is this what you would expect from his church? I'm not suggesting that we close all prisons or abolish the legal.
Okay, you just made a three-way basically comparing slavery to prison to church. You're comparing the slavery and prison to church. They can learn about God in there. They can ask for God's forgiveness, but they still owe the law of the land. And that's something that's in the Bible too. That you have to follow the rules for the law of the land as you do the word of God. Why am I having to teach a friar some lessons?
Legal system, by no means. But I am asking us to look at what we have and ask if we're okay with this on our consciences. In Matthew 25.
To me, I'm okay with people in prison. I really am. Because for one, like I said in the beginning, if they did the crime, they should do the time. The people that are not in there for the right things usually get out. The state awards them some money for their time in there, and usually it's a hefty sum. I know some person spent uh 35 years one time in prison in the 90s, and they awarded them almost $70 million. So yeah, if you did the crime, do the time. So sorry about your damn party. The flavor of the month is gone. You're gonna stay here and do your time.
Jesus separates the sheep and the goats, judges who goes to heaven and who doesn't, and this is his criteria. What you did to the least of these, the hungry, the thirsty, the stranger, the naked, the ill, and those in prisons, you did to me. If Jesus were in our prison system today, how would you feel about standing before him on the day of judgment?
Okay, interesting subject. I know this video is super long, and I know that I am one of those that loves to talk. Loves to talk. But here's the thing. If Jesus was in our prison systems, or in a prison system here in America, don't you think, well, I could never see him being in prison because I mean, if you looked at what he was charged with whenever he went in front of Pontius Pilate, he was he was basically convicted of trying to be a Messiah, a person who leads people to God. Okay? And he also tells Peter that, you know, he's going to die on the cross. Would the American system crucify him for that? No. Would they jail him for that? No. He would, I think what you need to look at is that for somebody calling himself the Messiah these days, I think what you need to do is you need to look at the American mental asylums. Because, yes, some Americans don't believe in religion. I am more spiritual than religious. I just joined the uh, Church of Christ. But I'm also an ordained minister through Universal Life Church. I don't see Jesus being in the prison system. They may put him in the mental system or the mental asylums because us, just like the Romans, don't know what to believe. That's just me.
How would you feel if he was treated the way we as a society treat our incarcerated? For too long, we have been sold the idea that criminals deserve what they get.
How we treat our incarcerated. It goes back to my first statement. If you did the crime, you should do the time. And I guess I'm old fashioned whenever it comes down to that. But I mean, it's true. Would you want Jack the Ripper to be out? Do you want somebody like Hannibal Lecter to be out? Do you want somebody that's gonna sit there and like I mean, you're basically saying either release them or treat them right. But you can't have your cake and eat it too. You have to treat them one way to, I mean, it's just like telling a person no. Nobody likes to hear no. Nobody. But whenever it comes down to learning, that's where it's like, okay, I now understand why the word no was used. Did I like it at the time? No. But do I understand now about that time? Yes.
Don't do the crime if you can't do the time, right?
Exactly.
Acting as they have forfeited their right to our sympathy and should pay back for what they've done.
It doesn't mean that you can't be sympathetic for them. Like I was saying, my brother is still my brother, even though that I did not like the crime that he did. Will I still talk to him? Yes. Will I ever forget what he did? Probably not. Do I forgive him? That is yet to be answered.
This is not a Christian idea. There's nothing Christ-like in treating someone like this.
Then what is? If you are faced with somebody, like if you was Bruce Wayne and you was faced with your parents being killed right in front of you, would you still have this ideological idea? I think I said that. Of them still being free, or would you want the worst torment ever for them? For me, as long as they're in prison learning from their crime, doesn't mean that they have to be rehabilitated from it. As long as they're learning from their crime, I'm happy. I really am.
It goes against everything we believe about the human person.
No, it don't. You lock a person away. They start to ask the question of, what did I do wrong? Then whenever you confront them of what they did wrong, then they start saying, okay, here comes the learning process.
Bishops of this country agree. We are convinced that our tradition and our faith offer better alternatives that can hold offenders accountable and challenge them to change their lives, reach out to victims and reject vengeance, and restore a sense of community and resist the violence that has engulfed so much of our culture.
It's not engulfed so much in the culture. It's more of, okay, and I'm guessing from Father Casey's aspect of life, that he's never had to deal with like personal tragedy within the with somebody coming in and attacking his family. Uh, you know, all of this other. Because if he would have, he would be like, okay, maybe now I can kind of understand. Yes. But for somebody that's on the other side of the tracks, that, you know, it is what it is, and it is what it isn't. You kind of sit there, and for the victims and their families, for the families of the victims, that yes, seeing a person in a chair getting needles put into their arms and silently going to sleep for the rest of their life. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Now, I would hate to be the person that was doing that, because, yes, you would be killing a person. But for the family that has suffered and suffered tremendously, because that person took the person that's laying there on the table getting needles put in their arms, violently took a person away from their family. Just like COVID took people. I mean, you look at it this way, it's not vengeance. It's not retribution. It's the sense of, hey, look, now they can't do that because we don't have rehabilitation centers. Not for not for uh, offenders, not for anybody like that. We just have prison systems. Yes, our prison systems, yes, they are broke. But the thing is that it's one of those things where you have to look at it for what it is, not for what it ain't. And you can't compare it to anything because it's not like anything. Having the sense of it being insane for something like this to happen in all aspects is almost like saying believing in God is insane. Believing in Allah is insane. Because we have to have faith in it. We have to have faith in God. We have to have faith in Jesus. Muslims have to have faith in Allah and in Muhammad. Same way with Buddha. I mean, until this world, hold on, I'll have my final thoughts in just a second.
It is not an either-or situation. We must protect the human dignity of the victim and the offender. Why? Because human dignity is a right, not a privilege. It cannot be taken away no matter what someone does. A prison system that seeks to punish and shame rather than love and rehabilitate is one that knows nothing of Christ and cares nothing about the human person.
Okay, Father Casey, why don't the Catholics get into rehabilitating criminals? First of all, you're opening your mouth, putting your foot into it because the Catholics, yes, they'll start wars. They don't finish them. Just like they'll probably start something with this and won't finish it.
As Christians that claim to be pro-life, we undermine everything we say about the value of the human person in the case of abortion if we stand idly.
I'm pro-life, but I am pro-choice. If a person wants to go to a doctor and says, hey, murder me, by all means. But it has to have, they have to have the doctor's consent too. And the family's consent. If a person wants to have a abortion, it's all on them. Because the way the world is right now, you know what? I also will speak on this on my final thought.
By while literally millions of people live in dehumanizing, degrading, and enslaved conditions. Out of sight, out of mind isn't good enough. These are our brothers and sisters, and they are being stripped of their humanity. Please don't look away. Do not ignore them.
All right. My final thoughts. Let me scoot over here in the middle. In the middle. That's where I like to be, in the middle. But, okay. My final thoughts on this whole thing. You can't compare slavery to being a prison. Well, you can compare slavery to prison, but you can't compare prison to slavery. Because, and I'll say it like this, because yes, like I said earlier, there's some lost people in there. There's some lost people in there. People that didn't do the crime. But eventually they get out and they get awarded money. But if you did the crime, you should do the time. If your crime is so heinous, you wouldn't want them to walk on, you wouldn't want them to walk in the same area as you. You wouldn't. You would want them, yes, to be locked up, the key be thrown away. And that's what you would think. That's what you would want. Now, is Father Casey right that we should we should have rehabilitation and stuff like that? Yeah, we should have rehabilitation. We should have the, you know, teaching them how to be better people, along with having them free college, having them uh, free medical. But also, we have to deal with the people on the outside too. People on the outside of the prison don't have free medical, don't have free college, don't have everything else that Father Casey basically was saying. Does the food need to be better? I mean, it could, that triple colored bologna that state of Texas has, yeah, it could be a lot better. But it's also more, it's much more healthier than a regular bologna sandwich because they grind up uh, vegetables, they put basically bread, meat, and cheese, or bread, meat, and bread, and it basically has everything for you. Now, you got, you can't compare, you can't have any type of contrast in between incarceration versus slavery. Slavery, they could move around just as long as, yeah, during the day they did what they had to do. Not calling it great. It was one of the worst times in history, I believe. Well, I know, but you can't sit there and call people out on incarceration because you see it somewhat sort of blending in with slavery. It says in the handbook, if you would get you a handbook from each state, pretty much it tells you why you're there. Because you've done a crime. Like I said, there's people that just haven't, they was framed, they was picked up for the wrong thing, judged for the wrong thing. Yes, and they get awarded handsomely. But until we can start loving one another as a whole, as being Christians, as being Christ-like, instead of trying to segregate the LGBT from the criminal, from the Catholic, from the Baptist, from the Church of Christ, from the Mormons, and everything else, there's not going to be there's not going to be any type of common ground. There's not going to be any type for the human race. There's there's homosexuality in over 450 different species. But there's only homophobia in one. Same thing with, there's there's bad people in every crowd. But should you label everyone as a gang? You gotta pick and choose your poison, Father Casey. Because it doesn't matter what everybody believes. You have your truth and I have mine. Joe down the street has his. Francine, 2 doors down's got hers. Does that make them right? Does that make you right? Does that make me right? No. In all actuality, humans do the best that they can and walk on. Okay? If they're sentenced to prison, they got something wrong. Okay? If they didn't get sentenced to prison, guess what? They're free. But bringing up old things and making people focus on fear, don't try to be a fearmonger. That's what's wrong with this world today. Is everybody's focused on fear. Fear of this, fear of that, fear of this, fear of that. And you can't, you can't be. Sometimes you just gotta live day by day. All right, guys. Much love to each and every one of y'all. I will see y'all sometime or another. Peace, love, and chicken grease. We're out.